In the quiet village of Ndukwa, there lived a young girl named Ruth, whose life was once filled with laughter and her mother's sweet songs. But the sun stopped shining the day her mother died. The cold hands of death snatched her away, leaving Ruth in the arms of her father, Mr. Kenneth. It wasn't long before Mr. Kenneth remarried. Her new stepmother, Mrs. Rose, was a woman whose beauty could blind the eye, but her heart was as cold as a stone. She smiled sweetly when Mr. Kenneth was around, but behind closed doors, her eyes turned to fire. Ruth was no longer a daughter. She became a maid in her own father's house. Her father changed too. The once loving man became harsh and distant. He stopped paying her school fees, never gave her transport fare, and instead pushed her to work on people's farms to survive. "Useless girl," he would often say. "All you bring to this house is suffering." Ruth bore it all in silence. She cried only at night, under the same moon that once shone over her mother's stories. One afternoon, a young farm worker named Mark came to Mr. Kenneth's house. He had finished his work and came to ask for his pay. Mr. Kenneth, drunk and angry, shouted, "Payment? You want payment? Take this useless girl, Ruth. She is of no use to me or my wife." Ruth, standing nearby, heard it all. Her heart broke. Tears fell from her eyes, not because of the insult, but because it came from the man who once held her hand to cross rivers. Mark turned and looked at Ruth, her eyes red, her hands scarred from work, yet her face still gentle. He walked toward Mr. Kenneth and said, "It's fine. I will marry her." There was no celebration, no music, no joy. Ruth quietly packed her small bag and followed Mark. Her stepmother smiled wide with wicked joy as Ruth disappeared down the dusty path. As they journeyed, Ruth looked out the window of the bus, lost in thought. Her life had changed in minutes. But when they reached their destination, Ruth's eyes widened. A massive compound stood before her, a place she could only dream of. Mark smiled and said, "Welcome to where I live. This house belongs to Madam Mary. She allows me to stay in the boys' quarters while I work here." Ruth stepped in and gasped. "This boys' quarter is more beautiful than any palace I've ever seen." They both laughed. For the first time in years, Ruth felt peace. Ruth slept and woke up so happy. She has never felt such peace. She smelled something nice coming out from the kitchen. It was Mark. "He has made breakfast," Ruth was surprised. "Because no one has given her breakfast," she said. Mark smiled and said, "All that are in the past, my sunshine. I want you to eat and have your shower. Let us go and greet Madam Mary." As they finished eating, they headed to Madam Mary's place. When she saw her, she smiled and said, "Mark, is this the beautiful damsel you talked about?" "You're welcome, my dear," she said. When they returned to their boys' quarter, Ruth said to Mark, "That Madam Mary is such a nice woman, just like Mary in the Bible." They both laughed. Later that week, Madam Mary called Ruth again. "My cook traveled, and I need someone to cook for me. Can you help? I'll pay you." Ruth beamed. "Yes, Ma. I am actually looking for something to do so that I can support my husband and finish my school," she said. Madam Mary smiled and told her to begin the next day. She hurried to her husband and said, "Good news. I just got a job as Madam Mary's cook." They both laughed. "I also told her how I want to finish my school, and she promised to help." But then she turned serious. "Mark, why didn't you touch me? Many men would have done so already." Mark looked into her eyes. "Because love waits. I want you to love me the same way I have loved you since the first day I saw you at your father's farm." Ruth smiled. For the first time, she felt safe. "Thank you, Mark," she said. While working in the kitchen one afternoon, a young man walked in. It was Joe, Madam Mary's son. He stared at her and said, "What an angel! Should I serve you food, sir?" Ruth asked politely. Joe smiled. "I'm not hungry. You are enough to fill my stomach. Be my girl, I'll take care of you." Ruth stepped back. "Sir, I'm married. I love and respect my husband." Joe laughed. "That cleaner? That's not a man." Ruth replied, "He may be a cleaner, but God will lift him. Don't insult my husband." She walked away. She left and told Mark everything. Mark told her it's okay, since she told him her mind already. The next day, as she was cooking, unknown to her, Joe has been looking at her. "My angel," coming close to her. "Sir, please, I'm married. Come on, Ruth." "Do you want to die in poverty?" She smiled and said, "If only you know where I am coming from, you won't call Mark poverty." She said and left. He kept trying every means, even offered her gifts, money, and even a car, but she turned it down. One day Mark told Ruth during dinner, "Let's go and see Madame Mary." She said she wanted to see us both. Madame Mary, on seeing her, she said, "My beautiful daughter-in-law." She said with a bright smile. Ruth, filled with surprise, replied, "Sorry, Mummy. I am married to Mark and I love him so much." Mark smiled, staring at her. She didn't even know when she said that word. "I love Mark." Everyone smiled. Madame Mary said to her, "Come and sit beside me, my darling." Ruth went and sat beside her. Madame Mary said, "You are such a good girl, and I am happy my son met you." Ruth was still confused. Madame Mary said, "Mark here is my first son, and Joe is his younger brother." Ruth was surprised. Madame Mary continued and said, "Mark went through many heartbreaks, so he left to find a wife who would love him for who he is, not his riches." Ruth sat in shock. "We want to do the marital rites properly. You deserve the best," said Madame Mary. Ruth was surprised and ran to the boys' quarter. Mark followed her immediately. She said, "Crying while did you lie to me?" He knelt down crying and said, "I am sorry, my sunshine. Please forgive me and please marry me." She forgave him. 2 weeks later, she picked up her phone and called her dad to inform him about Mark and his people coming to pay her bride price. He laughed loudly. "What does that poor boy have?" The day was fixed. Everyone in the village sat down waiting. Her stepmother was fully dressed. "I can't wait to see what that poor thing has to offer," she said to her husband, and they both laughed. But when Mark and his people arrived with cars, gifts, and respect, the village shook. Ruth was transformed, beautiful, glowing, untouchable. Her stepmother stepped backward in shock. Her father filled with surprise. He never knew that the man he gave her was a billionaire in disguise. Her father knelt and begged her for mercy. The wedding was the grandest the village had ever seen. Moral lessons. Never look down on anyone because of their current situation. True love is built on respect, not riches. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more interesting stories.